In 1991, legendary pitcher Jim Palmer decided that at age 45, he wanted to dust off the cobwebs and become the first Hall of Famer to return to the big leagues. So he rejoined the Baltimore Orioles, reclaimed old number 22, and reported to spring training. The media collectively laughed. Jim Palmer was dead serious.
Hey, welcome to the Press Box Chronicles with Jeff Pearlman.
Hey, welcome to the Press Box Chronicles with Jeff Pearlman, the show where a cranky middle-aged sports writer who has seen it all, that's me, takes you behind the scenes and into the stories. I'm your host, Jeff Pearlman. And as a child of the 1980s and early 90s, I am a sucker for comebacks. I talked about this in a past episode about Sugar Ray Leonard when he came back and beat Marvin Hagler. I love comebacks. I loved Ray Leonard's comeback. I loved George Foreman's comeback. In the early 90s, Bjorn Borg, the tennis player, came back, got his ass kicked using a wood racket, but I thought it was cool. Mark Spitz, at age 41, Olympic swimmer, comes back, tries to make the 92 Olympic team, gets his ass kicked, but I love comebacks. And for me, maybe my favorite comeback, and one that I actually think about in a confusingly often, is the 1991 attempted return of 45-year-old Hall of Fame pitcher Jim Palmer, who decided, I want to return, I want to have the joy, the bliss, the glee, I want to be a pitcher again, even though he hadn't pitched in 7 years. And that's what we're going to dive into today in the Press Box Chronicles. So for those of you who are too young or just might not remember, back in the day, the Baltimore Orioles had a fantastic pitcher named Jim Palmer. Jim Palmer pitched 19 seasons for the Orioles. He went 268 and 152. He had a 2.86 ERA. He was an 8-time 20-game winner, won 3 Cy Young Awards, 4 Gold Gloves, 6 All-Star games. The guy was just a hoss. And on his Hall of Fame plaque, he wound up in the Hall of Fame, it reads, James Alvin Palmer, high-kicking, smooth-throwing symbol of Baltimore's 6 championship teams of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Impressive numbers include 268 wins with a 6.38 percentage, 8 20-win seasons, 2.86 ERA, and no Grand Slams allowed over his entire 19-year career. Intensity was trademarked with 3-time Cy Young winner who combined strength, intelligence, competitiveness, and consistency to become the Orioles' all-time winningest hurler. And Palmer, like all athletes, there is an expiration date. And all these years and all these championships, ultimately in 1984, Palmer started to fall apart. And that May, pitching for Baltimore, he's 0-3 with a 9.17 ERA. And the previous year hadn't been great either. In 1982, Palmer sort of turned back the hands of time, won 11 straight games, but 83 was rough, 84 was awful. And Jim Palmer as an Oriole had a mixed bag reputation as far as a guy to have around. He was known as a hypochondriac who oftentimes would ask out of games if he had this injury or that injury. He could run hot and cold with teammates. He was known for, if a shortstop made an error, flashing him a tough look, or the center fielder misjudges a ball, kind of turning back and snarling at him. At the same time, Palmer was a beloved member of the community, a father of 2 daughters, a really involved dad, a guy who had a lot of pride. He was a handsome guy who did jockey underwear ads for years. But by 84, it's fallen apart. And the Baltimore Orioles finally released Jim Palmer. And it is a dark day in Baltimore. The Baltimore Sun that day, Kent Baker wrote the story, headlined, Emotion Overcomes Palmer at Farewell. This is May 18th, 1984, and the lead was, he tried, he really did. But the reality of this overwhelming moment, this inevitable day when he was no longer a Baltimore Oriole, forced Jim Palmer to politely excuse himself yesterday as he attempted to face the media in a jam-packed hit-and-run club at Memorial Stadium. Tears welled in the eyes of the greatest Orioles pitcher in history, who was placed on waivers for the purpose of giving him an unconditional release. A national sex symbol, a polished and sophisticated man, now a veteran television analyst, Palmer wanted to lighten his burden with humor, cracking a little joke about getting out of going to Rochester. But it wasn't there. Emotion totally ruled. Suddenly, Palmer, a man who can command almost any situation, was alarmingly vulnerable. And Palmer's release by the Orioles was greeted as a death in the city. And Jim Palmer, deep down, didn't want this to happen. He still felt like he could pitch. He still felt like he had something in him.
I still think I can pitch. I have the desire to do that. But I'm going to leave. Thank you very much for coming.
And as the years passed, and as he worked as an announcer for ESPN, for ABC, for the local Baltimore affiliate, he would toy with the idea of coming back. And every now and then he'd say to a friend, I know I could still do this. To a former teammate, I really think I could still do this. To the media, I don't know, I'm kind of toying with the idea, but everyone kind of laughed it off. Nah, you're not coming back. You're not coming back. And then one day, toward the end of 1990, something in Jim Palmer changed. So it's December 1990, and Jim Palmer is in Florida where he lives, South Florida. And he grabs a baseball and he starts throwing. And I want to interrupt this by noting that this baseball from the 1984 Little League World Series in Mahopac, New York, I caught the winning out. I don't want to brag. Anyway, and it's signed by the whole team. Jim Palmer did not have this ball. However, Jim Palmer starts throwing. And he's throwing, and he kind of likes the snap he has. And he starts heading over to the University of Miami. And he's throwing at the University of Miami. He's throwing batting practice. He's throwing on the side. And he's like, I kind of like the snap I have on my ball. This feels pretty good. This feels pretty good. He doesn't have any pain. It's fluid. He feels like the old Jim Palmer. He's throwing, it feels good, and he's snapping off sliders, and they're kind of working, and he's throwing the curveball. It's kind of working. And over again, Jim Palmer is throwing, and he's throwing, and he's throwing. And he starts really toying with a serious idea of trying to make a comeback at age 45. And he has multiple reasons that he says to people. Number one, he definitely thought he retired prematurely. Number two, ESPN, where he was working, wanted him to take a pay cut. He did not want to do that. Number three, at the end of 1984, the early in 1984, when he was released, his arm wasn't good. And all of a sudden, his arm feels great. He feels like he's 25 years old again. And number four, he sees a chance, even if it's remote, of sort of cashing in on baseball's salary boom. All of a sudden, baseball players are getting paid shitloads and shitloads of money, and he kind of wants this. And on February 17th, 1991, the Miami Herald runs a piece written by Scott Price. The headline is 7-Year Itch, and the subhead is Jim Palmer, 45, tries to regain his pitching glory. And Scott Price, the writer, is at the University of Miami watching Jim Palmer warm up with Dick Bosman, who works for the Orioles and was also a pitcher. And Price wrote, the old pitcher is 46, and he looks good, tanned, fit. He's standing off first base, spinning a baseball in his hands. Dick Bosman is talking about his last game, how he stood on the mound, looked at his manager, and drew his thumb across his throat. His manager nodded, and it was then that Bosman, winner of 82 big league games, knew. Mentally, it's always there, he says. It's physical. That sucker hurt, man. I threw so much batting practice sometimes I thought my arm was going to fall off. He looks over at the other old pitcher, tanned, fit, 45 years old, sitting in the dugout shade, doing interviews again. But that's a fresh arm there, Bosman says. He's looking at Jim Palmer. Palmer, of course, looks good. That is his job. But he has 268 victories, a 3-time Cy Young Award winner who never gave up a Grand Slam, a first ballot electee to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and now the latest middle-aged athlete who thinks after 7 years of retirement, he can still bring it. For 2 months, Palmer has been working out, throwing, biking, getting himself in shape. He wants to pitch again, and no one is laughing. And this article runs, and all of a sudden, Major League Baseball teams are kind of curious. And Jim Palmer holds a session at the University of Miami where he's going to be throwing to a couple of Hurricane players. And 7 different teams decide they're going to show up and scout him. Baltimore Orioles, Toronto Blue Jays, San Francisco Giants, Milwaukee Brewers, Montreal Expos, Chicago White Sox, and the Cleveland Indians. And Palmer throws about 35 pitches to members of the Miami Hurricanes. He's hitting 83, 84 on the radar. Again, he's snapping off curves. He's breaking off some sliders. And at the end of the session, no one is laughing. No one thinks he's going to be Dwight Gooden, but no one is laughing. No one is like, this is ridiculous. And Palmer feels pretty good about this. I can do this. I really think I can do this. I really think I can do this. And word gets around in Baltimore that Jim Palmer is planning a comeback. And the thing is, again, Palmer was kind of a mercurial type with the Orioles. And he did complain a lot. And he definitely was a head case. And he also was kind of cocky. And the members of the Baltimore media just go off. They hate this idea. Ken Rosenthal, Baltimore Sun. Ken Rosenthal, great writer, known him forever. But under the headline, "Come back to reality, Jim, and hang it up," Ken wrote, "Jim Palmer's 45. Maybe it's time for him to take a hint. Such talk, of course, is blasphemy to Palmer, who probably could suggest a comeback every year for the next 20 years and still captivate a legitimate segment of his intensely devoted following, not merely the lunatic fringe." Mike Litwin, Baltimore Sun, February 8th, headline, "Jimmy, you're not the Palmer of old, just an old Palmer." And he wrote, "I understand the midlife crisis. Come on, I've been there. We've all been there. Sure, you buy a Miata with a personalized license plate, you go to the gym, you buy a $200 power tie and learn how to do the lambada. But Jimmy, you're 45. And Jim Palmer, who never met a newspaper he didn't read, and who always read about himself and couldn't help but sort of, as many athletes do, as all of us do, if you're written about, you read it, like, he hated that shit. He felt that shit. In fact, his wife at the time called Sports Talk Radio in Baltimore to defend her husband. And Jim Palmer, sort of in the aftermath, is like, I don't know. Should I do this? Should I not do this? I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to embarrass the team. I don't want to make this awkward for the team. But ultimately, the Baltimore Orioles reach out to him and they say, look, if you're going to try a comeback, it has to be with us. You can't be in a White Sox uniform or a Montreal Expo uniform. And on February 21st, 1991, Jim Palmer accepts a conditional contract with the Baltimore Orioles. And this is on a Thursday. And he plans to report to the spring training site in Sarasota, Florida on Saturday. And he says, he's asked about, he says, it's a performance contract, and that's fair. I don't want to be paid for anything I don't do. I've never operated like that. And Palmer arrives at Twin Lakes Park. And in the clubhouse is an orange number 22 Orioles jersey. Which, if you're sentimental and you eat this stuff up, which many of us do, there is something amazingly romantic and cool about the 45-year-old Hall of Fame pitcher giving it another shot. Spring training, the sun is out, the leisurely nature of it all, and here's Jim Palmer, and he's back. And you're a young pitcher with the Orioles, you're or a player, you're Chris Hoiles, the catcher, or you're Ben McDonald, the young pitcher, and in walks Jim Palmer, the legend. And it's absolutely amazing. And Palmer puts on his number 22. And when he jogs out to stretch, the fans give him a standing ovation. And he doesn't look young, but he doesn't look old. Jim Palmer had an eternal sort of thing about him, an eternal youth to him. And he works out that day, and he throws for about 10 minutes on the side. And Frank Robinson, the manager, watches, and he's kind of like, all right, he doesn't look bad. And the fans, every time he throws a pitch, are cheering. And Chris Hoiles, the catcher, is like, that wasn't bad. Bob Melvin, another catcher, is like, that wasn't bad. He looked pretty good. And after the day, he says, Jim Palmer's surrounded by the media. And he says, for me to say that I can be as good as I was, that would be silly. But if I can go 6 or 7 innings on a regular basis, that's something I think is possible. I may turn out to be wrong, but that's what I'm here to find out. It's a real long shot that I'm going to make this ball club. I know that. But you never know what's going to happen. And Bob Mizell in the Baltimore Sun sort of took this all in. And he wrote something that I just think is perfect. He wrote, the thing that sets the great ones apart from the journeymen, even above their ability, is an attitude. Deep down, they've always believed they were better than their peers. And they have that inner drive that helped them prove it. They set high goals and they achieve them. It's that confidence that they can do just about anything they set their mind to within the framework of their profession that makes them believe they can continue producing indefinitely. So they keep coming back until finally something convinces them. And that really is what Jim Palmer was doing here. He was here because he still believed, because something deep down in him said he wasn't done in 1984, because something, watching baseball and missing baseball and thinking, I should be a part of this. I'm not just an announcer, I'm a player. I can do this. And it's this really beautiful thing. And on March 6th, Jim Palmer faces batters for the first time in an inter-squad game. And he pitches 2 innings. And he throws 38 pitches. And he gives up 2 runs and 4 hits. He gives up a monstrous home run to Chris Hoiles in the second inning. Chris Hoiles is a power hitting catcher. But their 25-mile-per-hour winds are blowing out. He faces 11 hitters, and he leaves the field to another standing ovation. There are about 400 fans there because it's a windy, crappy day. And Palmer feels pretty good. And even though the media is shitting on him left and right every day in the Baltimore Sun, they are shitting all over him. Mike Litwin, after that pitching effort, says, let's be honest, although this is a wonderful, nostalgic, good news, man against the odds, pitcher against the windmill kind of deal, you know the Orioles are hoping in the end that Palmer says thanks for the memories and returns to the broadcast booth. And Palmer hates this shit because he really believes he can do it. In this inter-squad game, it wasn't great, but he pitched well. And all he needs is a chance. All he needs is a start. All he needs is an opportunity to show that, motherfucker, I'm Jim Palmer, and I can still pitch against the major leagues. And on March 11th, 1991, Jim Palmer is scheduled to start against the Boston Red Sox in a real spring training game. And that's when we're going to find out if this is going to work. So I have a friend who's about my age. Not going to name him. He's a great guy. And he always talks about how he's in the best shape of his life. And whenever he says this, I always think to myself, that's impossible. Like, it's one thing if you were very obese when you were young or you had some disability, but like, this is a guy who's always been in good shape. It is impossible to be in the best shape of your life when you're in your 40s and 50s because your body just works differently. I see it every day. Every year it gets harder to lose weight. Every year you lose some stamina. Every year you run a little slower. You move a little slower. It's just hard. You can convince yourself. You can do what Muhammad Ali did and dye his hair when he fought Trevor Burbick and Larry Holmes. It doesn't matter. You can be Mark Spitz and try to make a comeback and convince yourself. It doesn't matter. Your body changes. It is a reality. And when Jim Palmer reported to camp with the Baltimore Orioles, he looked like Jim Palmer. 1984, he weighed 198 pounds. He reports to camp, he's 200 pounds. His hair is still dark. His smile is still the same. He looks like a pitcher. He still has the same motion, everything. But the reality is 45 isn't 25, and it's not even 35. And in March 11th, 1991, in Bradenton, Florida, Jim Palmer takes the hill against the Boston Red Sox. And he's wearing his Orioles uniform, and he's got number 22. And when he walks out to the field, the fans go crazy because this is it. And I'm going to tell you something. I really mean this. The reason people my age love old athletes coming back is because it makes you feel like you can do it too. It really does. It makes you feel like you're still viable. And maybe that fading off into insignificance can be stopped a little bit. So when Tom Brady was quarterbacking the Buccaneers to the Super Bowl, I was like, hell yeah, I love that. Even when Mike Tyson fought Jake Paul, for a moment, I wanted Mike Tyson to beat Jake Paul just to be like, yeah, you still can. And that's what Jim Palmer to many people represented. And he walks out to the mound, and the first guy he's facing is Wade Boggs, the great Red Sox third baseman. And Wade Boggs singles to right. The second guy he faces, Jody Reed, Red Sox second baseman, liner to short, but hit really hard, out. Third guy, Mike Greenwell, single to right. Jack Clark comes up next, almost hits a home run, then lines out hard to left. Ellis Burks, the outfielder, grounds out to third. That's a first inning. And while it doesn't sound that bad, almost every ball was hit really, really hard. And having covered baseball a long time, you can tell when batters have pitchers timed up, when you just know it's coming and you are sitting on their pitches because you just absolutely know this guy is not good enough to get it by me. And that's what the Red Sox were doing. Second inning, Carlos Quintana singles to right. Phil Plantier singles to left. Tony Pena fly out to left. Tim Naring grounds out. Wade Boggs single to left. Jody Reed walks. Mike Greenwell pops out to second. And at the end of it all, Jim Palmer faced 12 batters. He fell behind in the count to 9 of them. He threw 38 pitches. He was supposed to go 3 innings. He only went 2. And anyone who was there to watch it knew what they were seeing. And what they were seeing was a batting practice pitcher delivering meatballs to major leaguers. And when Palmer was done, he was replaced in the game by Ben McDonald, the at the time very young Oriole flamethrower. And someone observed, watching McDonald immediately after Jim Palmer, it looked like he was throwing 200 miles per hour because Jim Palmer was just meatball, meatball, meatball. And after the game, a reporter went into the Red Sox locker room and asked Wade Boggs, what do you think of Palmer? And clearly the reporter thought Boggs was going to shit all over Palmer. And Boggs said, no, he pitched pretty well for a Hall of Famer. And the reporter was like, come on. And he goes, no, really. I tell you if he stunk. And Jim Palmer stunk. Everyone knew he stunk. And the next day, Jim Palmer shows up and he announces that he's done, that his comeback is over. And he says he tore a hamstring warming up for the game and he never had the velocity. And when he was there, he was limping. And he said, I'm not saying I wouldn't like to continue, but I can't. I heard something pop in my leg yesterday and it wasn't a nice sound. And again, the media has a field day and they're kind of like, yeah, okay, buddy. Like they don't really believe him. They kind of believe him. They give him the benefit of the doubt. And that's it for Jim Palmer's comeback. That's it. And it's funny because I've thought about this comeback so many times because I really wanted it to work. I wanted it to work as a kid. And even watching the video now, I want it to work. I think maybe if this and maybe if that and Jim Palmer at the right time. But there is a reality, and age is undefeated. And it's funny because the 1991 Baltimore Orioles under Frank Robinson sucked. They lost 95 games. Robinson was fired. He was replaced by Johnny Oates. The team didn't go anywhere. Jim Palmer returned to the broadcast booth where he sat and was able to observe from arm's length. And the thing that's kind of fascinating about it all is after this all happened, people repeatedly said, what are you doing to your legacy? Like, what are you doing to your legacy? You are fucking up your legacy. Don't do this to your legacy. And all of these years later, 35 years later, the vast majority of people don't even remember Jim Palmer tried coming back. And those like myself who do remember, think of it differently. We think of it as a proud man who wanted to give it one more shot. We think of it as an aging man who wanted another day in the sun. And we think of it as a legend and the team that he bolstered to great heights, giving him a final chance to live out a dream and try something that most of us are never granted, another day of glory. That's a wrap for this episode of Press Box Chronicles with Jeff Pearlman. Please leave a comment below on what stories you'd like to hear more about, or if there's a particular sports figure you'd like to learn more of. Also, I'm accepting bids on this 1984 Jeff Pearlman autographed World Series ball. It also signed by Brian Hitney, John DeFrancisco, and Richie Bradbury. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Follow me on TikTok at Jeff Pearlman Author and Bluesky at Jeff Pearlman. Thank you for diving behind the scenes and digging into the story. We will see you next time on Press Box.